Welcome to this lecture on decision trees. So until now, we have studied a few algorithms. We started with what we call it linear regression, which basically solved the problem of regression. And we introduced linear regression so that we could go to the logistic regression. And from logistic regression, we basically saw that it's basically a linear classifier. So it was a linear classifier, which ultimately gave us a decision boundary in the form of W transpose X, I think. Fine. So this or W transpose X plus B, this was the decision boundary. And then we migrated to support vector machines where we saw that, okay, where is the optimal placement of this decision boundary? And we introduced the concept of margins, and finally we came up with a solution where we could find the best way to place this decision boundary. And then I we discussed it about neural networks, which I had already delivered the lectures in the last session, and the videos are available on my YouTube. And in neural networks, we kind of migrated from just the linear classifiers to basically any type of classifier, any type of basically the decision boundary. So for any kind of decision boundary, the neural networks kind of helped us to find to model that decision boundary. And neural networks, as you could see, were basically formed up of various neurons, and those neurons stacked in different layers. Fine. So they are also called as the artificial neural networks. Fine. And we have done this much till now. Now today we are going to see a very different type of algorithms, and mind you, all of these algorithms are basically discriminative in nature. What does discriminative mean? Discriminative means that we have a k number of classes, but we are not interested in understanding, okay, what is the property of each class. Rather, the only fact we are interested in understanding is the decision boundary between them. So we are not concerned about how the individual data points inside each class are. Rather, we our whole focus is upon finding this decision boundary and trying to model it. So whether it is linear or it is some non-linear boundary, we are trying to, or in mathematical terms, we basically are trying to model this probability of the y given x. This probability we are trying to model. Now decision trees are again another class of discriminative algorithms, but slightly a different approach is followed in decision trees. Fine. So let's start with this decision trees with a simple question. Fine. So let us say we have a classification problem to solve that. Our decision needs to be that we have to play golf, and we have to decide on a particular day, can we play golf or not. Now, to play golf or not, it depends upon a few parameters, and those parameters are here. At least four of them are enlisted here. So we could look at the outlook, whether it is overcast or sunny or windy. So we can check that. We can also check the temperature. Maybe if the temperature is too high, we cannot play, or if the temperature is too low, we cannot play. But if the temperature is moderate, maybe yes, we can play in pleasant. Similarly, humidity. Now if the conditions are too humid, then there is much more likelihood of a person getting sweaty, and it might be difficult for him to play golf in that case. But if the humidity is normal, then maybe he can play golf. Similarly, we can then also look at the wind. If the wind is too high, then you can't play golf. But if it is low or normal, then or weak, then maybe yes, we can play the golf. Fine. So in decision trees, we basically come up with some kind of a tree, and using that tree, traversing that tree until we reach the leaf nodes. we can then at the leaf nodes have the decision whether we have to whatever at the leaf nodes will belong to a particular class. So if we have k classes, so in this case in the golf prediction problem we have only two classes, yes and no, but it could be a general problem as well where we can have k classes, capital K classes, and the leaf nodes here, as for the example tree which you are seeing here, for the leaf nodes we will then have basically will belong the a leaf node will belong one of the k classes. Fine. So what we basically do in decision trees is we come up with this tree. Fine. Now an example of a tree for this case could be this tree given here. So we can basically start with, so let me try to get a new color. So maybe we can start with the outlook, and we can decide on the outlook if it is sunny or if it is overcast, or let us say the three values it has is another is rain. Fine. So either there could be clouds on the horizon, or it could be raining on a particular day, or it could be sunny. Now, in case it's raining, fine, we might also want to look, okay, what is the amount of rain on that particular day? And we can also, and what happened? Just give me a second. Just give me a second. There is some problem. Okay, fine. So so it could be either of the three. It could be sunny, it could be overcast, or it could be rainy. If it is overcast, that means neither too sunny nor too much rainy. Then we can say, okay, yes, we can play in this case. We can play the golf in this case. However, if it is rainy or if it is sunny, then we might, in case of sunny, we might want to look at the humidity. If it is too hot and it is too humid, we might not. If it is the humidity is high, then in that case we might not play. But if it is normal, then we might say, okay, yes, we can play. Similarly, in case of rain, if it is a strong, then we might want to look at the wind case here. Now, if the wind here is very strong, then in that case, it might be a chilly day, and the rain and the wind together might not help us. Then in that case, we might not play. But if it is normal wind or a weak wind, then in that case, we might want to play. Similarly, you can use the same strategy for other type of examples as well. So another example could be, okay, fine, we might have a bank. We might design a classifier for a bank in which a caller, so all of you might have received a call from the credit card people, or sir, do you want our credit card or not? Fine. So a person, so when a that person, he makes a call, he invests some time in making that call. So sometimes they might want a system in which beforehand they will know, okay, whether what is the probability of this call turning into a fruitful turning into the person or the candidate getting a credit card. So they might want to have that system. They might want to look at a few factors. Okay, what is his credit score? Fine. And whether he is employed or not, and what is his salary? Fine. Whether he has defaulted previously or not. So these might be some of the arguments or some of the parameters, and then we might come up with a decision tree. So we might first start with whether he has defaulted with some bank or not. Then we might say, okay, if he has defaulted, then he might not get a credit card, or we might not give him a credit card. But if he has not defaulted, then we might want to see, okay, what is his credit score? Okay, if his credit score is low, then we might want to see whether he is salaried or not. But if his credit score is high, then we might want to see, okay, what is the whether he is employed currently or not. So these are the type of ways, these are the different ways in which the whole point is that we can come up with a decision tree, and that decision tree will help us finally classify our examples. Fine. So that was the introduction. Now, a decision tree, the question is not that. So we know that you kind of got this point beforehand as well, that the decision tree can help us decide or classify our points. But the main question is, how do we make a decision tree? How do we make a decision tree from the data? So let us say this is our data, which I was saying earlier. So these are the 4 parameters, x1, x2, x3, and x4. And these are the different examples for 14 different examples we have here. And then this last column here, this tells us the class. We have only 2 classes, yes class and the no class. The question is, how do we come up with a decision tree? You saw in the last example, we basically started with the root node of Outlook. But it's also possible we might directly start with the temperature. Fine. If the temperature is too high, we might not play, we might say no. But if the temperature is, let us say, normal or mild, fine. So if the temperature is high or cold, we might not play. But if it is mild, then we might want to look at other factors. What is the outlook at that particular day? So the point is that there could be different number of trees. So which tree is better? Now, the second one is basically the whole iteration. How do we basically come up with a tree? Now that is, and then the other question is, where do we stop? How deep we have to go in constructing a particular tree? So there are different questions. One is, which tree is better? Which tree is better? Now related to this question is, okay, which attribute should we start with? Okay, which attribute should we start with? And then how much should we split? How long should we split a particular attribute? And the second question is, okay, how deep should we go? Okay, how deep in the tree should we go? Should we go a few levels, or how many levels, or when do we have to stop? These are the different questions. Now, the other thing which you might have seen here, or you might have observed if you paid a little bit closer attention, is that all the parameters here, this x1, x2, x3, and x4, they are all discrete parameters. Fine. You see here x1, which is Outlook, it has only 3 values. Fine. It's a discrete set. Similarly, temperature, only 3 values. Humidity has only 2 values. And wind has only, again, 2 values. So these are all discrete variables. Now the question is, what do we do if we don't have the these cardinal values? We have the nominal values, which means we have continuous values. Fine. How do we handle those cases? And the other thing is that we might so here we did a binary classification problem, and there could be cases in which we might not have a binary classification problem, as we saw in the earlier cases as well. Fine. So to answer these 2 questions specifically, which node to split on and how deep to go, we basically want to introduce something called as we want to take help from a field of mathematics or computer science as well, called as information theory. Now, information theory is a field that helps us understand the notion of information. Now, you all might have encountered, or we discussed this word in our conversations as, okay, this was an informative session. Fine. Now, information theory kind of wants to formalize this concept mathematically. Okay, what does information mean in mathematics? And similarly, we have other concepts like uncertainty. Fine. Now, how does uncertainty relate with information? And we want to basically formalize these concepts. Fine. Now, let me go to the next slide. In information theory, we have a concept called as entropy. Now, this entropy word, you might also have heard it in physics, where entropy of a system is basically the amount of randomness in a system. Now, if the randomness is high, we say, okay, the system has high entropy. And if the randomness is low, we say, okay, the system has low entropy. Like the water has three states: solid, liquid, and gas. Now we say solid has the least entropy, liquid has middle entropy, and gas has the gaseous state has the highest entropy, because the molecules there are very freely moving freely as compared to liquid state and the solid state. Fine. And related to this concept of randomness in information theory, we have a slightly different, although related definition of the entropy. Now, what does entropy mean? Now, in information theory, entropy means what is the amount of uncertainty in the system. So the randomness here is basically replaced with the uncertainty. Fine. But it's still related. Both the concepts are still related. Fine. Now, what does it help us? Entropy. So I will formally define what entropy is, but just try to get an intuition. Now, entropy helps us deduce it helps us understand the information in a particular system in terms of uncertainty. So we understand the uncertainty. From uncertainty, we deduce something called as the entropy, and from entropy we understand, okay, how much information does a particular system convey, or is conveyed from a particular system. These are different ways of looking at it. Fine. So then we come up with this statement. If you understand it properly, the more the uncertainty of a system, fine, the more entropy there is, and hence the system is said to be have more information. Fine. Now the information can be understood from this question: the least number of yes no questions asked before we know the state of our system. It might be a kind of an abstract thing. Let me go to the next slide to understand this better. Fine. So let us say we have two machines. So machine number 1 and we have machine number 2. Now both machines, they are generating symbols A, B, C, and D. This also is generating symbol A, B, C, and D. So we have, at each time step, both of the machines are generating a symbol from these 4 symbols, either A, B, C, and D. Now machine 1 is generating each of the symbols with same probability. So that means probability of A is equal to probability of B is equal to probability of C is equal to probability of D, and that basically is 1/4. Fine. That is equal to 0.25. So this might randomly generate the symbols like A, B, B, C, A, D, something like that. Fine. Now in case of machine number 2, it slightly varies. The probability of A is basically 0.5. So half of the number of times it basically generates A symbol. Then 25% of the times it generates B, and then probability of C and probability of D is basically the other 25%, that is 0.125 each of them. Fine. So these are the two machines. So the particular typical output of this machine could be A, B, B, A, C, B, A, something like this. Fine. Okay. And the question is, fine, to understand the concepts of information and the entropy, etc., we might want to ask this question. The question is, which of the two machines is generating more information? Okay. Which of the two machines is generating more information? Or conversely, we might also ask, if we have to predict the next symbol from a particular machine, either machine 1 or machine 2, if we have to predict the next symbol, fine, what is the minimum number of yes no questions needed to be asked? Fine. So this is the question. Fine. So let us take the example of machine number 1. Fine. So to predict the next symbol this machine is generating, we might ask the question, is it AB? Fine. This might be the first question. If it is yes, fine, then that means it is either A or B. And if it is no, then we might ask then another question, is it C or D? Fine. And here we might ask, here we might ask, okay, whether it is C. Fine. And here we might ask whether it is A. Fine. Now if it is A, then we say, okay, it's A. Fine. Then it is A. So here is it A? And if it is no, if the answer is no, so initially it was AB, so either A or B, then we got here to know that it's not A, then that means it is B. Similarly here, if it is not either A or B, then we ask the next question, is it C? If it is yes, then the symbol generated is C. Otherwise, the symbol generated is D. Fine. So how many number of questions do we have to ask to predict the next symbol? So here in this case, we have to ask 2 questions. Fine. Now we can have the same strategy in case of machine 2, but we basically observe that 50% of the times it generates the symbol A. So we have a slightly different strategy. So we ask the question something like this. So we say, is it A? Is the symbol A? If the answer is directly yes, then it's done that the symbol generated is A. And if the answer is no, then we know that it's either B, C, or D. Now we again follow the same strategy, and we saw that, okay, most of the times out of these 3, B has a it's more likely that B can be generated. So we ask the next question, is it B? Now, if again the answer is yes, we are done, that B is generated. Otherwise, if it is no, then either B or either C or D, we can ask either of the questions. So we say, if is C, if yes, then C is generated. Otherwise, D is generated. Fine. So now the question is, what is the average number of questions we have to ask in case of machine B? Now this is very easy to solve. We see here in case of A, we have to ask just 1 question. In case of B, we have to ask 2 questions. But in case of C and D, we have to ask basically 3 questions. So the average number of questions is basically the same. So we can have it. So A has a probability of 0.5 plus, then we have this just give me a second. So 0.1 time, so we have to ask 1 question, and the probability of A is 0.5. Then in case of B, we have to ask 2 questions, and the likelihood of it is 0.25. Fine. Then we have to ask 3 questions in case of C, and its likelihood is 0.125, and again 3 questions in case of D. Fine. And if you calculate this out, it turns out to be 1.75. Fine, which is quite remarkable. Fine. So you replace the number of questions with bit. Fine. Replace the number of questions with bit. So machine number 1 is generating basically 2 bits on average. Fine. Machine number 1 is generating 2 bits on average, whereas machine number 2 is generating whereas for machine number 2, for machine number 2, we have to only ask 1.75 number of questions. That means if we have to generate 100 symbols, then in case of machine number 1, we have to ask 200 questions. Fine. And in case of machine number what do we say, in case of machine number, I don't know what happens here. And in case of machine number In case of machine number machine number 2, we have to only ask 175 questions. Okay, so that is quite remarkable. And Claude Shannon, so he is the father of this information theory. Claude Shannon, in 1948, I think, he gave us this information theory, wherein he formalized these concepts of information, entropy, and uncertainty. Fine. So he basically, so you can replace this. So he has this notion of information, and information is measured in terms of bits. So in case of machine number 1, the number of bits, basically we have to convey, we have to transmit to or we have to send to convey the state of the system is equal to 2. Whereas in machine number 2, to convey the output of the system or the state of the system, the number of bits to be conveyed is only 1.75. Fine. Is it clear? That means, in other words, the uncertainty in case of machine number 1 is more than the uncertainty in case of machine number 2, which is quite visible, that since machine number 1 all the symbols are equally probable, so there is much more randomness in this system than the machine number 2, where there is certain some kind of order, that symbol A is generated half the number of times, then symbol B is generated 25% of the times, and then C and D are generated 12.5 number of times. Fine. 12.5%. Fine. So that is basically basically the intuition of information and entropy. Okay. So entropy is defined as, so we can take another look of this whole system. We can say that, okay, if we have to design now these machines, M1 and M2, fine. If we have to design these machines M1 and M2, then we can design it something like the same way. In this way, the number of questions, wherever we have asked a question, we can place a peg. Fine. We can place a peg on which we can then drop a coin. We can drop a coin here, and then this coin can either go to the left side or to the right hand side. Fine. Then here again we can place another peg, here we can place another peg, and then these are the bins, A, B, C, D. These are the bins. Fine. So for generating the A, what is the average number of, for generating any symbol, what is the average number of bounces the coin has to make? Fine. Average number of bounces the coin has to make. And then similarly in case of machine number 2. Fine. Now let me now formally introduce these concepts. Entropy. So by the way, are the concepts clear to everybody? Does anybody have any problem understanding these things? Okay, sorry. So so now before formalizing these concepts, I want to basically convey what is the connection between this entropy, information uncertainty, and the decision trees. Fine. So the connection is something like this. So we have our system, and by system we have our data set, the training data set D. Fine. And we don't as of yet know what is the decision tree we have to construct such that we can classify a particular example point. Fine. So there is uncertainty in our data set, which means we have a higher entropy. Fine. Now what's our goal? Our goal is to come up with a decision tree such that this uncertainty goes down, and consequently this entropy should go down. So if we have a number of attributes x1 x2 dash 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 xd, we might want to select one of these attributes such that, so initially let us say our entropy is h. So entropy is denoted by h. So initially our entropy is h. We might want to select one of the attributes, and that will give us some kind of information about the system, and our entropy should reduce. So by selecting any of these attributes x, let us say xk, our entropy will reduce. And in this way we want to move progressively such that at the end of our at the end we might have our decision tree, and our entropy has decreased, and such that the entropy is equal to 0. Fine. So that is the connection between entropy and the decision tree. And in coming up with such a decision tree, okay, the question is, you said more entropy means more information. We don't want more information. Why we want to reduce entropy? See, so there are two things you must understand. When an event occurs, so when an event occurs, fine. Before that event occurs, we basically try to say, okay, what is the randomness inside this system, which is denoted by the entropy. Okay. Now, once this event has occurred, fine, this event will give us some kind of information. Fine, this event will give us some kind of information. So that is the link between information and entropy. They kind of are similar concepts, but they are not the same thing. Entropy you can consider before the event occurs, and information you can consider after the event has occurred. So basically we want to know, if an event has occurred, how much it has reduced the uncertainty or the randomness in our system. And before the event has occurred, to measure that randomness, we basically study the entropy of that system. Fine. I hope this answers the question. Fine. So in coming up with these trees, at each step we might want to come up with, we might want to select that attribute which basically reduces the entropy, which reduces the uncertainty the most. Okay, which reduces the uncertainty the most. So in other words, we want to reach the conclusion by asking the least number of questions. That means we should not have to, what is the best tree? A best tree is that tree which might be shallow, which might not be too wide, where we have to basically ask a least number of questions. Fine. So now let us go and try to formalize these concepts. Now, if we have a set, if we have a random variable, let us say we have a random variable x, and it takes on values, let us say 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let us say it takes 4 values. And let us say this has a probability of, let's take the original example of A, B, C, and D. In case of machine 2, this was 0.5, this was 0.25, and both of these were 0.125. Okay. If we have to calculate the entropy of this system, that is denoted by H, and then H of X will be equal to, okay, it will be equal to minus times summation of I running from 1 to 4, because there are 4 here, pi times log to the base 2 of pi. Fine. So you might you will come, you will see that this equation is directly following what we did previously. Okay, so now in this case, what is this? So let us take minus out. What is p1 is probability of symbol a, that is 0.5. Then log to the base 2 of probability of I, that is uh, log to the base 2 of 1 by 2. Okay, log to the base 2 of 1 by 2, plus we have 0.25 times log to the base 2 of, and then this is 1 by 4. Fine, because 0.25 is equal to 1 by 4. And then 0.125 times log to the base 2 of, and did I do the right thing? 0.125 is how much? It is, I think, 1 by 8. Fine, yes, and then plus 0.125 log to the base 2 of 1 over 8. If you see, this this equation is exactly what we came up with when we asked the how many number of questions on average we have to ask. How many number of questions? Fine. So how many number of questions we have to ask is again the same thing here. The number of questions you can replace with the bit. Fine. So this was the this gave us the expected number of questions we have to ask, and that basically is the entropy of a particular system. Now in our case, whether to play golf or not, our random variable y has only two cases, either yes or no. Fine. And we can find the entropy of our system represented by h of s as minus times what is the probability of yes times log to the base of probability of yes, minus again probability of no log to the base 2 times probability of no. Fine. Now if I go a few slides back where I had introduced that table there, now you can see here, if I have to find the probability of yes, that is equal to, I have to count the number of yes, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9. So it is 9 divided by, what is the total number, is 14. So 9 by 14, and probability of no is then 5 over 14. So 1 2 3 4 and 5. So let me take it back, 9 by 14 and 5 by 14. So now this is equal to minus times 9 over 14 log to the base 2 of 9 over 14 minus times 5 over 14 times log to the base 2 of 5 over 14. Fine. And you can calculate this out. Have I calculated it? I might have already done it. So the probability, the entropy here comes out to be equal to 0.940. Fine. This is the initial entropy of our system. What's our goal? Our goal is to decrease this entropy. Fine. So in order to decrease this entropy, we have to select some attributes. Fine. So now our data set has basically 4 attributes, x1 through x4. We have those 4 attributes. If you remember, outlook, temperature, then it was wind, and then humidity. Fine. So out of those 4 attributes, we have to select one of the attributes with which we will split. Fine. Now the question, which attribute we will select, depends upon this gain, which I have written here. So gain of a particular attribute is basically equal to what was the initial entropy of the whole system, and then you take away the average entropy if you select this system, and then that gives you the information gain of that attribute. Fine. So let me kind of try to explain this a bit more. Fine. So let us take it to the next slide. So we have h of our system equal to 0.940. So let me again see. So the number of yes and the number of no and the total number of yes were 9, number of no's were 5, and the total was equal to 14. And we found out that